Happy Wednesday, Doll fans. Welcome back to the PFN Miami Dolphins podcast. My name is Doll Freaky, joined once again by my co-host, Adam Beasley. And we are here to talk OTAs and Mike McDaniel press conference and all that good stuff from the week. So how are you today, Adam?
You dressed appropriately today, Allie. Look at that.
I got my Miami Mike shirt. I hope you guys can see this dope shirt. This is from Smack Apparel, by the way. If you need the coupon code, I think it's like Doll Freaky something. But this shirt is so hot. This is like one of the best sellers.
You have your own coupon code password, Doll Freaky?
I have a coupon code for like 15 different shops for merch. So if you guys ever need shirts or like I'm selling all kinds of things all the time, but like you just go to the link tree in my bio on my socials and you can get everything you need. All the codes are there. So nobody should be buying Dolphins merch without any sort of Doll Freaky coupon code.
Good information, good plug. Hello,
I'm here
everyone.
to help.
Hello, Dolphins fans. Welcome to, OTA week 1.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Finally.
So I sat through my first Miami Dolphins practice this week since January.
That's
and
exciting. Okay, football's back.
Boy, did I miss it. You go back and think, I mean, I've talked about this with people who have been working in the league or covering the league for decades and decades and decades, and how many years of their lives they've spent watching practice. And it probably is, for me, it's a sizable chunk. But you know what? That's what they pay me the big bucks for.
Mm-hmm. Do you enjoy watching practice or does that get boring for you?
I don't enjoy sitting at 100-degree heat. I'm not a huge fan of that.
Oh, yeah.
It's I don't know what it is out in the West Coast, but over here it's summer already. It's absolutely awful.
It's brutal. Like today, I don't even know. I think it's like 94 degrees or something over here in Naples. And I was working outside all day today at the cat sanctuary. And like when I got home, I realized how drained I was. Dude, it's no joke, especially just sitting there like watching and trying to concentrate in that heat. No, I don't envy you for that. But I do love training camp. You know, when they open up the public practices, like no matter how hot it is, I'll go.
Yeah, and that's 2 months away, which is crazy. I mean, we are barreling towards the start of the season. The good news for you, Allie, is you'll have a bunch of joint practices that you can attend. They announced this week that all 3 games, what is it, Washington, Atlanta, Tampa, there will be joint practices before each of those.
He didn't elaborate on the like the Buccaneers joint practice, if that's going to be here or there, right?
No, it'll definitely be there. Yeah, 100%. It's always, those joint practices are always
where the game is.
Where the game is. Yeah, so he has 2 planned. He told us yesterday the Dolphins have 2 planned with Atlanta, 1 planned with Washington, and 1 planned with Tampa. So there will be 3 joint practice sessions in South Florida, 2 against the Falcons and 1 against the Commanders. And those games, we're going to blink our eyes, and it's going to be here, Allie. I mean, I think the preseason schedule starts August 8th.
It's crazy. Yeah, I've like been talking about the schedule like for the last week and going over it and trying to make plans and doing promos about it. Just been so busy with this schedule and like trying to digest everything. Like it really has put it into perspective that like it's coming up fast. And we stay busy. Obviously, there's no off season for us, so we stay busy. And tell us a little bit about what you saw out there.
Yeah, real quick, that preseason schedule that I pulled up, August 9th, home against the Falcons. So that presumably the 6th and the 7th will be joint practices at Baptist Health. Okay. The Commanders game is August 17th, so presumably August 15th would be the 1 session. And then for those of you on the West Coast, Allie, the Buccaneers practice would be August 21st because the game is the 23rd. Are you closer to Tampa or Miami?
So I'm actually closer to Miami. So I'm about like an hour and 45 from Miami versus 3 hours from Tampa. But I don't know that I'll make that joint practice, but I'm definitely going to make the preseason game.
Cool. Well, I'll be there as well. And yeah, so we have, you mentioned OTAs. We had our first chance of watching them yesterday. It's only one of, I think, 5 practices we'll see. And unfortunately, there weren't a lot of players there I cared about. It was the senior skip day, it felt like, of Miami Dolphins practices. The list of those that did not attend, incredibly wrong. Long wrong, whatever word I want to use. There were a lot of them.
Is that pretty normal?
I mean, normal? I don't know. I mean, it's not anything they're not allowed to do. But okay, here's I have a conspiracy theory. that why so many missed yesterday. Tua was up in Alabama for the Nick Saban charity golf tournament. And I don't think it was a coincidence that Odell didn't practice, Tyreek didn't practice, Jalen didn't practice, Raheem didn't practice.
Sure.
They may have been thinking, hey, if Tua's not going to be here, what's the point? We'll see next week when Tua presumably will be back practicing with the team, whether or not those guys are all there. But it was, I will say this, it was a little disappointing for me that all these names that we've been waiting months and months to see, that they weren't there.
Yeah, there was a lot of talk about, Tua kind of not being around for these off-season, the voluntary workouts and off-season activities. And I know some people are trying to make something of that. And I know you guys had asked about, whether that was potentially related to his contract negotiations or, just a matter of other things that he has going on. So Coach did have some things to say about that.
Yeah, so he doesn't want – it's kind of a delicate dance. Yeah. He can't ignore the elephant in the room, right? I mean, it's clear that Tua wants a new contract. He's been on the record about wanting a new contract. It says he expects a new contract. You can't have that and then have that be out there and then him not show up. Sure. So he has missed a fair amount of those voluntary sessions, including yesterday. Now, yesterday, as I said, was not contract related. It wasn't like he was boycotting. Sure. He had those pre-planned travel arrangements, but that doesn't mean those other practices he missed were nothing either. I mean, he very, very strategically has withheld his services from a bunch of voluntary, and keep in mind they are voluntary, but voluntary sessions that quarterbacks usually attend. I mean, he has attended them in the past. A quarterback is different than Tyreek Hill. A quarterback is different than even if, say, Jalen Ramsey, who didn't practice yesterday. He is an extension of the coaching staff, and the coaches want their quarterback to be there around as much as humanly possible. Tua understands this, and Tua knows the only way without being a total nuisance of making the point that he wants a new contract is to stay away. So that's what he's done. So Mike wasn't going to really blast the guy. And again, it's voluntary. I said, and here's a quote he had: I think it's important in the player-coach relationship, communication. And I think however things play out, as long as we're communicating and we're on our P's and Q's, what we need to get accomplished, then we have a fighting chance, and it's a good exercise in our relationship this offseason. Sounds like a therapist. Yeah. One other thing he mentioned was, hey, do you ever talk to him about the contract? Mm-hmm. And he seems to have like a church and state wall, right? He wants to be the coach. He doesn't want to be the GM. He came out and said, I don't want any of that burden in my life. Yeah. He wants Tua on his side because, that relationship is very important. Their chemistry is very important. I think it's a big reason that Tua's played so much better than he did under Brian Flores because he really likes his head coach. So, yeah, Mike's not going to wade into it too much. But in the back of his mind, is like, all right, you made your point. We're going to try to get this done. We're talking. Sounds like the Dolphins have already made an offer, and that's shockingly the first offer wasn't good enough for the player to accept. It never is. It's back and forth negotiation. Sure. But I don't know if the team wants this to drag into late July. Tua's not going to hold out training camp for many reasons, not the least of which he gets significant fines if he does. Mandatory minicamp is in 2 weeks. I would absolutely expect him to be there for that. Because again, he's subject to fines, and it's, your job is to show up when your job is to show up. If you want us to show up for the other voluntary stuff, that's an added bonus. But missing mandatory practices is, I think, for Tua is a non-starter, unless things really, really, really go off the rails.
Well, that's good to hear. And we know that Tua continues to work on himself. He's been attending, quarterback camps and things of that nature to better himself. And he's losing weight. A lot of people have noticed that he's been losing weight, suggestedly 10, 15 pounds. And Coach had kind of weighed in on that a little bit as well. What are your thoughts?
Yeah,
there?
He called him svelte, right? He called him a skinny guy, which, yeah. Okay, look, here's what I'm trying to get my head around. Maybe you are into fitness, clearly. I don't know if you how much you know about sports medicine and all that. I'm a novice. I know what people tell me. But if 2023, it's bulk up, bulk up, bulk up, build all the strength,
Yep.
protect yourself against injury. One of the trade-offs of bulking up is you lose some of your agility, some of your speed, you slow down a little bit. Believe me, I know. I have slowed down with the weight game. But then you fast forward a year and he couldn't, make the escapable plays that, he has in the past and, extending plays and all that. All of a sudden he's down 10, 15 pounds and he wants to get that agility back. Do you think that the player safety side of it is being sacrificed? I mean, we'd like to talk to him about this and we haven't had a chance to. I think we will in a couple of weeks. But like, what's the calculus here? Like, what are you going for? And are you prioritizing effectiveness over protecting yourself? Or do you think the jiu-jitsu and all that, another year away from the hip surgery, another year away from your last concussion, all these things, is your body to a point now that you don't really need that extra 10 to 15 pounds? I'm just curious what your thoughts might be on that.
Well, I think this is pretty consistent with what, bodybuilders do and any type of athlete. They go through their bulking phase, they go through their cutting phase. And I think like what they're kind of alluding to is the fact that like he's trying to see how he can best, work on his game. So if he did feel like, okay, maybe I was, while I had more cushion and more protection against injury, I was too slow or I felt like I wasn't like meeting my marks, then I could see why they would go ahead into a cutting phase now. I would love to have a guest on at some point to discuss this very thing. Perhaps, one of our trainer friends. I've actually been interested in sports pharmacy, and I have been reading a little bit about as it pertains to like different mechanisms for supplementation and, different physical therapy and stuff like that. So I would love to hear more about this particular topic, especially as it pertains to our boy Tua.
Yeah, no, for sure. There's no doubt that he's going to be quicker this coming year. Yeah. And you just hope that it's not at the expense of his body because dude's been through so much. I mean, the long list of injuries that he's had and, 14, 15, 16 months ago, whatever it was, just thinking maybe, do I want to continue to play football? And what you don't want is his future, both on the field and off, to be put at risk over an extra 2, 3, 4% of productivity. And that's, again, it's, I don't know what the right answer is.
10 to 15 pounds probably isn't super, clinically significant depending on what his starting weight was. So, maybe it's just enough where he, maintains his agility, but yet he's not sacrificing player safety in that instance.
Yeah. And it might be one of those things we won't know until we know, right? No. if he gets week one, if he gets drilled in the teeth and he gets up and he's fine, so be it.
Gotta take those hits.
Yeah, part of the game for sure. So, all right, we talked about Tua. Would love to have seen him and not the likes of Scott Thompson and Mike White. And as much as I enjoy those guys, that's not the reason I went to practice yesterday. He was throwing to the likes of, Malik Washington and Eric Ezukama and even the list of guys that weren't there. I mentioned the wide receivers. Jonnu Smith didn't practice. Cam Smith didn't practice on the defensive side. The offensive line, nobody was there. Here's one thing that was, to me, a little bit of a red flag. We got to see Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips move around a little bit, not on the field, but just walk up and down the sidelines.
Okay.
And I got to be honest with you, I thought Phillips would look better than he did. I thought he would be ahead of Chubb, but of the two, and keep in mind, neither of them had any of those protective sleeves, braces, nothing like that. It was just shorts and cleats, and that's what they had on, or maybe even just tennis shoes.
So you're talking like muscle mass wise, like their general appearance, they didn't look fit or
walking wise,
limping. Okay.
Limp might be too strong of a word, but he definitely had like a hitch in his giddy up. And so, so what was 6 months now removed from that Thanksgiving Day game, basically, or Black Friday game? The rehab for Achilles is 9 months to a year. We've talked about that before, but 9 months is right at the season opener.
Yeah.
And so if you're asking me, do I think that Jalen Phillips is going to be available for the start of training camp? No, I don't. The question is, do I think Jalen Phillips is going to be available for the start of the regular season, which is what, September 9th, something, I don't know, somewhere in that range. I don't know the exact date. I think it's a dicey proposition. We thought that, hey, of the two, Phillips had the better chance of being available week 1. At this point, Allie, I wouldn't be totally stunned if both those guys start the season on PUP.
Interesting take just from observing them being there. So yeah, and a coach had a lot to say about that as well. Like they weren't trying to push these guys too hard, but these guys want to push themselves. They have to kind of make sure that they're not doing that. So what are your thoughts on how they're, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, look, the worst thing that Dolphins can do is force these guys back too soon.
Yeah.
And I think the mental part's a big part of it too. If they don't feel like they can trust it, then you overcompensate. You put yourself at injury risk at other body parts simply because that's how it works. It's all connected. Mm-hmm. Here's the quote. You mentioned McDaniel spoke on that yesterday. Quote, from the onset, this is about Chubb and Phillips. Quote, from the onset, they just really have to keep an eye on both those guys to make sure they're not doing too much. They have the second they were available. Some McDaniel they have to translate because he speaks around in circles sometimes. But they were able to move around without the second they were able to move around with a scooter. They were hard pressed not to find themselves in some sort of over exaggerated stand through, whether it's walk through or not. We're just being very mindful of who the players are, that we're getting back to full health and really protecting the Miami Dolphins against those individuals themselves because they'll do too much too soon. They're doing great day by day and really excited. If you ask me for a timeline, he will not answer. So, I think that it's par for the course. I don't think either of these guys are a terrible, terrible, terrible development. Mm-hmm. But these are massive injuries they're coming off of, like really, really massive injuries. And they play a position that is the most impacted by reconstructive lower body injuries. Like edge defenders have the biggest drop off pre-injury, post-injury. And so you're dealing with things that, particularly in Jalen Phillips' case, you should be thinking in a 10-year horizon for the guy. Mm-hmm. I mean, right? He's, 24, 25 years old now. If you want him still 4 or 5 years from now to be playing at a high level for the Miami Dolphins, which of course they do, they've used a first-round pick on him. They just picked up his 5th-year option. I think they would love to have him long-term here, particularly, assuming, his body responds to the rehab. Why would you jeopardize that for the first 5-6 weeks of the 2024 season? And I think a lot of that's why they went out and got what they did in free agency. Shaq Barrett, who also wasn't there yesterday. Chop Robinson, who, by the way, do you hear about this? Chop Robinson somehow got hurt already.
Oh, no, I didn't hear that.
Yeah, he had
I heard Jalen Wright was throwing up, but that's all I heard.
Jalen Wright, was puking out through his face mask. But Chop,
Florida Heat.
Chop didn't practice. We saw him working in rookie minicamp a week and a half before. But yesterday he had some sort of those protective sleeves on what appeared to be his calf, could be his knee, could be his calf, but it went up to his knee. So that's not great either.
That's not what anyone wants to hear from our first-round draft pick. No. I'm surprised people haven't been texting me all day about that.
Well, we'll see. I mean, again, at this stage, if they have the slightest tweak, you're shutting these guys down. I mean, calf injuries can be a nagging type of situation. The last thing they want to do is burn these guys through and OTAs, and they're not available for the start of training camp. That'd be nuts. So we'll see. We'll see if he's out there next week and the week after. But weren't a ton of pass rushers. But I do think that's part of the big reason. Getting back to the Phillips and Chubb conversation, that's part of the big reason why they went out and drafted 2 guys. Why they signed Shaq Barrett. Why they did all these things to improve their depth, because they have real concerns whether or not Phillips and Chubb are going to be ready for the start of the season.
Coach had some really nice things to say about David Long. I noticed he got the orange jersey, so he had a lot to say about his drive and determination in developing his game, and as a leader. So that was nice to hear.
Yeah, no, I do think that they really, really like their off-ball linebackers. Between him and Jordan Brooks, I think they, and you even have Anthony Walker as a backup, and bringing back Duke Riley from last year. They've got some depth at that position that I think they really like. To me, I am incredibly bullish, I think more so than a lot of other people, on this defense. I know there's a lot of concern about defensive tackle with the Christian Wilkins departure and, kind of replacing him by committee. We're just going to assume that there's going to be drop-off from Wilkins to whoever replaces them. But I think there are people who have made the point on Twitter, maybe Chris Kaufman, I mean, on Twitter, that very few teams have two dynamic defensive tackles. Like, and the Dolphins still have Zach Sealer, who I think had 10 sacks last year. Like, the guy's a really good player. And you can get by, you do it right scheme-wise, if you have the right pieces with a by-committee approach. Is it going to be the same as what we saw last year? No. But I do think that, once they get those edge rushers back healthy, you're not going to struggle to get pressure on the quarterback. I think you're going to have some options there. But again, no, I do think, to your original question, I think David Long he's like the heartbeat of that defense now. His intensity is huge. He's got a real fire, a real drive. And, I think that was one of their better free agent signings for the last couple of years.
It's good that somebody is stepping up and taking on that leadership role that, perhaps was left behind by our boy Christian Wilkins. So in keeping with the defense, we had some talk about, Xavier Howard, coming off the books post June 1st and, Needham possibly being cross-trained as a safety. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, they're definitely cross-training Nick Needham as a safety. And I think if the season started now, he would be one of their top four. Mm-hmm. There's questions. I know if Elijah Campbell's back. I know they drafted the McMorris kid. But there's real questions about the depth of that safety position, which to me would suggest, hey, go out and sign somebody. You mentioned Xavier Howard, $18.5 million are coming off their books. There are a ton of veteran safeties out there led by Justin Simmons still, who could help this team. Now, we talked to Jordan Poyer and Javon Holland yesterday, and they really like the chemistry of what the two of those guys are working on. But that can't be your plan, right? There has to be, and maybe one of these other backups emerges that they feel like can be like they're a solid number 3 option. But I would, and again, I don't know if this is the team's thinking, because we can get to that answer in a sec that he had what I asked him about the Xavier money. But I have concerns about safety and guard that have not gone away. Wide receiver 3, Odell answered that question. But if you're looking for soft spots of this roster, I think safety is one of them. So, we'll see. And maybe Nick can really pick that position up. He was a really good nickel for them. Maybe they see him as kind of like a hybrid, that star they call them a little bit, where, they're not really corners, they're not really safeties, they're somewhere in the middle. And that might be the role that they have for Needham. But it doesn't sound like, Allie, that they have any of the concerns, or at least to the degree, about their roster that we do. I mean, like, I asked him point blank yesterday, hey, so yeah, you got $18.5 million coming off the books. Are you going to, you're going to be spenders soon? June 2nd, you can go and spend that money. And here was his answer, quote, part of our job, and again, this is such McDaniel, quote, part of our job as a high-functioning NFL franchise is you're always looking for ways to get better. I know that's something that if Chris Greer has a tattoo in his body, it's probably of that, always get better with the roster. We're always looking, but I wouldn't necessarily look for it. It's not through the lens of what we are without. We have a pretty deep team that's high in competition. It's always balancing the stuff that we're able to do and what's out there, and can we improve our team? And here's the key quote: we'll never stop looking, but we're not on the hunt. And that to me is fascinating.
Yeah.
That, if the right thing falls in our lap, we'll do it, but we're not out there turning over every rock to find, a number 3 safety or, starting right guard. Like we feel like we have enough to channel Eric Spoelstra. Your thoughts? Because that to me is interesting.
As a fan, that's what I want to hear at this point in the game, that coach feels confident in the tools he has, and that we're not in desperation mode anymore as we were, potentially a couple months ago. So as a fan, that makes me happy. I know, we're all going to have our feelings about whether that's true or not, but no one knows better than coach does, right? So that makes me feel good. And it's nice to know that, like, we're not, we could still afford to pick up some, free agents if we needed to, but we absolutely do not have to do that right now.
Yeah. I think, and again, the way I asked the question is this basically a 3-week, the next 3 weeks, they have 2 weeks of OTAs and mandatory minicamp in early June. Are these next 3 weeks basically you to figure out what your roster is and how to spend that money? And I think they already feel like they know what their roster is, and they'll only spend the money if something goes wrong, which is a total, you were right. They have far more information than I do, but I read the lay of the land differently than they did. And I thought that they were waiting to get this money to complete their roster. And in their view, they think it's already pretty close to being completed.
To me, that's interesting. And like I said, that's what I like to hear. We did, you also asked about the schedule. And, a lot of us kind of feel like the schedule is a little bit easier in the beginning of the season. Towards the end of the season, we might be into some trouble. So we have to try to formulate a cushion in those first couple games. Like ideally, we should start, 8-2, right? Because those couple road games at the end are difficult as, the playoffs approach. So coach didn't seem to feel that. He didn't seem to be too worried about that situation.
Yeah, he's always going to be one of those that wants to prove himself. And they told you can't do this. Let's go shove it up their backside, right? It's kind of built into his DNA. He is well aware of what narratives exist around the team. And I think he relishes in, slaying those narratives. And what is the biggest narrative that has surrounded the Miami Dolphins, not just last year, but for years? Front-running team collapses in December and January. December and January, you got the Thanksgiving dinner, you got Christmas caroling, and you got a late Dolphin swoon. Okay, that's kind of what the last third of the season has been for. I mean, I've been on the beat since 2012. Mm-hmm. For almost every single one of those years, it's followed that games that you control your own destiny. You go out and seize the things you want, and they fall on their faces. And this schedule is just.
This looks like an imminent fall on our face situation.
Yeah. We talked about this last week. I think I have them going 2-4 over the last 6. You were a little kinder. I think you had them going 3-3.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you're counting on 4 of the last 6 games being losses, you got to front load those wins to make sure you get to the playoffs. McDaniel doesn't see it that way, and here was his answer. Quote, if you're wanting to change a narrative, there's that word again. If you're wanting to change a narrative, you're going to have an opportunity. I don't really worry too much about things, pretending like I have any idea of what's good or bad. I know if you're playing the right competitive football, you'll always have unique challenges to your schedule. If you're playing the right type of football, you'll have primetime games. You can have shorter, long weeks, all those things. I think we found a way to develop our team both years. I'm firmly expecting that the same thing will happen this year. I think the opportunities down the stretch of the season are ones that this team at that point in time will be thirsting for. That's something, when I saw the schedule, I was pretty excited about. So, yeah, they want the opportunity to say, hey, look, here we are with 6 games to go. We went out, we're the 1 seed. We want that, even if it means we have to beat San Francisco at home, even if it means we have to beat, Cleveland, Houston, New York on the road. Yeah. There's a lot of really, really tough games in that stretch. Who cares, right?
Yeah.
We win those games, we'll be the 1 seed. Mm-hmm. That's
we got this schedule. We got this schedule because we have been playing the right type of football previously. So, let's capitalize on what we've been given.
Yeah. Do you think he's right?
Del Freaky has no comment.
Yeah, I would love to hear Del Freaky's
because
comment.
I'm always so positive, and of course I want to be like, of course he's right. That's my boy. That's my boy. But at the same time, I'm guarding my heart, okay? Like the last couple of seasons, we have seen what happened in December, and it's so hard as a fan. You put everything into this, you put all your hopes and dreams into it, and then like we see that happen. So I sincerely hope he's right, but I know it's gonna be tricky.
We could do an entire pod in the summer of worst Decembers in Dolphins history. Certainly the ones that we can remember. There's plenty of them.
Oh, yeah.
For me, I think rock bottom was, and I think it was a Philbin year. I think it was 2013 maybe, where they had the bullying scandal, by the way. First of all, they started like 3-0.
Yeah.
Had the bullying scandal, I think lost 4 straight, then got back into it. And then I might be mixing up my years, but I believe it was that year where they had 2 games left against the Jets and the Bills, 2 horrendous teams at the time. Both teams were really terrible. If you win one of those games, you go to the playoffs, and they lost both and scored like a total of 16 points or something.
It's pain. It's pain.
Yeah. You're like 4 years old when that happened, so I'm sure you don't even remember that game.
I wasn't 4 years old, but yeah, no, it's been pain. Like my entire existence as a Dolphin fan has been tricky. I will say at least one of my teams is doing well.
Oh,
Go
here
Rangers!
it is.
Go
Here
Rangers!
it is.
There's no way we're going to go into the ECF without me saying something on this podcast. This is now the PFN New York Rangers podcast with your co-hosts, Dolph Freaky and Adam Beasley.
Hold that thought. I'll be right back. Just hold that thought, okay?
I've been getting the business all week from these Panthers fans. People hate me. People are hating me right now. Go away, Chucky. Go away. It's Igor's time now. So I'm excited for tonight. I will say that. At least we have some hockey to keep things interesting in South Florida.
I am nervous about this series.
You should be.
There it is. I think the Rangers are deserving President's Cup winners. I think they're a really, really good team.
It's going to go 7 games.
Okay, that's my only hope is that it's a series. Like if they get blown out, and here's the thing is that I have already secured tickets to Game 6. So selfishly, I am crossing my fingers that it goes 6, even if it's the Panthers can clinch in 5. It's all right, let's get it back to sunrise and finish it off on our home ice. I would be okay with that. It's. I think maybe 2 weeks from now, we might not be friends anymore. Like today will be fine. Next Wednesday, I'm sure there'll be some trash talk, but There's
going to be a lot of trash talk. Like yesterday, I went down to Miami doing some errands with my friend, and she's wearing Panthers and I'm wearing Rangers. And everywhere we went, people were like, "Are you guys like okay? Are you fighting? Like, how are you guys handling this?" I'm like, "We're very cordial right now because it hasn't started yet, but just wait till it starts." I think it's going to be great.
I think it's great for the game that MSG is rocking again. Mm-hmm. Like for so long, that place in April and May had been just a tomb. And the Knicks made a little bit of noise this year, and certainly the Rangers in the Eastern Conference Finals for the first time in a few years.
I'll be at Game 4, so if any of y'all are coming to Game 4, hit me up. Let's take some pictures. Let's do some stuff, and then we can watch the Rangers beat yo.
Oh, there it is. Hey, a little pro tip. There is, I can't remember where in the concourse is, but there's an elevated bar. You walk up the stairs. They have live music there. It's a party between during the intermission, pregame, and of course postgame to celebrate the Panthers win. Yep, you'll catch me out there. You'll catch me out there cutting up a rug. It's a fun time. They do I live 15 minutes from the arena. I think it is the easiest, most accessible and interesting because the Marlins are easy to get into as well, but nobody wants to go to those games. In South Florida, it's the best bang for your buck. So
yeah,
should be fun.
I have a great time every time I go to the Panthers games. Like sometimes I just go, just to support my Panthers friends, and I still wear my Rangers stuff when I go. But I always have such a great time there. They put on a great, the atmosphere is fun. The mascots are always out there, and it's always a good time. So. I'm excited for Game 4 for sure. And I'm happy. I was so happy that you guys made it because that's the only way that I'll be able to see my Rangers, for the rest of the season, unless I get buku bucks and I can travel and see a game at Madison Square Garden with tickets starting at like $500 for the nosebleeds. Like, I just don't see that happening. So I'm glad it was you guys.
They are insanely expensive up in New York. They're not cheap here, but they're certainly cheaper than they are there. All right. This is not the Pro Football Network New York Rangers podcast. This is the Pro Football Network Miami Dolphins podcast. And we will be back next week to talk more Miami Dolphins news. I'll be, I think next Tuesday, we'll be back out at Dolphins camp for OTAs.
Cool.
Again, we encourage you to subscribe to our podcast everywhere that podcasts are available. We've already gotten your coupon code plug. We don't need to hear that again, Allie. So
check the link tree in my bio. See, you're getting it anyway.
There it is. We'll see you guys next week.
Take care, guys. Fins up.